Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I am your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Controversial Issues with the most controversial rabbi on the internet that I'm aware of, Rabbi Chaim, the man Coffman, checkmater. How are you, sir?
Always a pleasure. I don't know. Am I called the man or checkmate the man? You know, it's can't have it both ways, right?
Exactly. So today's show, basically rabbi scandals and how we view them. So first, start off definitely with the premise on why the title. What type of scandals are you talking about?
Okay. So the scandal that we're going to hit we'll hit shortly, right? So we'll just give a preface that normally, if you see an Orthodox Jew, whether they're a rabbi, not a rabbi, etc. Normally, when I was at a outreach convention a number of years ago, so we dealt with this question in front of non-religious people, right? 3 other rabbis and myself, and we both basically came up to the same conclusion: you condemn the action, you don't condemn the person. There are 2 different things, right? What the person did could be horrendous, fraud, other things, but there's an issue with the person themselves, what they've done, and the action itself. Now it's a little bit hard to separate the 2, and you can tell me, well, maybe it depends also what they do. Maybe some things that are much more egregious, fraud, money laundering, other things, or outright stealing could be, someone commits adultery, does all kinds of other things, right? And that's really the case, that's going on now. There was a high, and this comes about also, I'll just throw this out there also be even more controversial, when it comes to pedophiles, in general, a lot of times, institutions that have these, pedophiles teaching there, it's really their word against the kid's word. So, sometimes they'll push the kid's word aside, and, who knows what's going to happen to this kid. But a lot of times it gets brushed under the, it's under the carpet, right? So the problem is it doesn't get dealt with, and the person either, still stays in this position until, either there's a huge uproar or something else, which in and of itself, this is a problem. This is one side of the issue, that it sort of gets pushed aside. Nobody deals with it. So I'll preface to the preface that a number of years ago, there was a very good Jewish magazine called the Jewish Observer. The Jewish Observer, not in existence anymore, but the most popular sold out issue, right? The one that sold out the most issues was an issue where they discussed about what they call OTD, kids going off the derech, right? They're kids that are religious that aren't religious anymore, or what they call really kids at risk. In other words, they're on the border. They're not really doing well in yeshiva, or not well, doing well in girls' schools. They get into drugs, get into other things, and there's the phenomenon, of teenagers committing suicide. And a lot of the time, just while we're on this topic, a lot of it, has to do with, statistically, it shows a lot of these people were abused. That's why they commit suicide. Could be, there are other cases where a person was shamed, or they didn't really fit in, or there are other issues. But usually from what, I've heard from the experts is that's normally the case. But there are a number of issues, here, I mean, hopefully we're going to hit it in one shot here. There are a number of issues, on both sides that really have to be addressed. So, what's happened over the last week and a half, over 2 weeks, and, there are people going to definitely speak about it, which has been interesting because the Jewish papers and magazines have not discussed the issue at all. Zero. They haven't said anything, right? Not pro or against. Zero. So there's a high prolific writer, as some people may know, and there were 22 women, made accusations of sexual misconduct, and there were women that got divorced, because of it. So really messed up a lot of people's lives, and basically threatened women, whoever came out, threatened them saying, and they have this on recording, from these different women saying that, if you go forward, with this, then I'm going to commit suicide. And that's exactly what he did. Now, there are different aspects, of the story which make it, even more interesting. There was a Beis Din or rabbinical court that summoned him, in order to, hear his side, because they heard, quite a few stories, from women, and he refused to go. He felt that he wasn't going to get a fair shake. He felt that, they're already against him. There was already a bias because there's already, it's already been out there the last couple of weeks, and there were bookstores took his books off the shelf. I mean, very popular books, very, very popular books, took his books off the shelf and basically destroyed him, right? The media 100% destroyed him. And usually in the Torah, we say, innocent until proven guilty. So, you should have a trial. You should go in front of Beis Din, let him tell his side of the story. Let the other side tell their side of the story. But the Beis Din already condemned him. They already claimed they had plenty of evidence, right? Plenty of evidence from these women, made it very clear. And that was it. He, a few days ago, right? A few days ago, or the middle of last week, he committed suicide. I think it was on Wednesday. On Wednesday here, he committed suicide. And, so there are a lot of different issues over here. One of them is being condemned by the public, right? In other words, the jury's already in. He's already guilty, guilty before even opening his mouth, right? So there was a lot of pressure that way. Not only that, to get all these stores taking away his books, his name's being trashed all over the place. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not saying at all, the women's claims are false. Not saying that, right? But there, some are saying, I just want to, I want to throw out at least what the facts are on the ground. We'll deal with them, a little bit, but I just want to throw out the facts, and part of the facts also, that they have a lot of women that, corroborated a lot of the same stories, that they said the same thing, that if they go public, he's going to commit suicide. That's what he threatened them with. But there was also a lot of pressure, tremendous amount of pressure from the media. Right, that he's basically condemned. They, his books off the shelves, all these allegations. Now, he didn't go in front of a Beis Din. Now, he was called in front of a Beis Din and refused to go. Now, what's the reason? What would be the reason he wouldn't want to go? Is the fact that he thinks he's already going to get condemned. Right? In other words, he thinks he's not going to get a fair shake. Now, if you want to know how a Beis Din works, you have 3 rabbinic court judges. They have to be well versed. The laws of damages, the laws of marriage, divorce. I mean, they have to be, well-versed in a lot of things. It takes years and years to learn. I remember, I was thinking about learning, to be a dayan, to be a rabbinic court judge. And there was, someone, going through all the material, but you had to give up 10 years. And that's the only thing you could learn, right? 5 days a week, including Friday, right? Really 6 days a week. That's all you learned. Right, it was all about the laws of damages and and all these different things. Very, very intense, right? So I wasn't so interested in giving up 10 years of my life to do that, etc. But they, these people have a tremendous amount of fear of heaven, or they should have a lot of fear of heaven. It could be. Some are saying as well, and I'm not gonna really deal with this, so to speak. But there, the claim is, well, this Beis Din has a lot of evidence. Right, the rabbinical court has a lot of evidence from these women, but there are people saying, "No, that Beis Din's not worth anything. The rabbis aren't worth anything." Right? They're not on a high enough level. They're problematic in and of themselves. Now, whether that's true or not, you need much bigger people than myself to sit there and condemn them, and say that they're biased, they're being paid off, they're whatever it is that they're not doing that they should be doing. So they'll say, oh, no, we'll knock them off. We'll knock them off and saying they're no good. Now, there are some people that will say that. Now, if they're on the know, right? If they're in the know, so to speak, and they know it's a problem, it's a problematic Beis Din, let's say, because you can have Beis Dins that are unscrupulous. Unfortunately, you can have rabbinic authorities that sit on a Beis Din and someone can bribe them. They can be bribed. The Torah says, I'll take a bribe. Who's that going on? It's going on a rabbinic court scholar, right? It's not going on just, your everyday, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. It's going on somebody who decides, Jewish law. So obviously the bigger the evil inclination, bigger the person, the bigger the evil inclination. But a person's not allowed to take a bribe. If he takes a bribe, then the judgment is skewed. That's pretty clear, right? But if a person learns, I'm learning up north twice a week, with a number of people going through, the laws of damages, and we started with the easiest ones. Really, compared to all the other laws, these are, I think, a lot easier than others, and that is about rabbinic court judges. And if there's a bias in any way, shape, or form, right? I just want to explain this a little bit. If there's a bias in any way, shape, or form, that rabbinical court judge cannot judge that case. In other words, two litigants come in front of them, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven says Shimon owes him 100. Shimon says, what are you talking about? I paid you, or I don't owe you, whatever, right? But Shimon, one of the rabbinic court judges, knows Shimon, right? Not only does he know Shimon, Shimon's done favors for him. Now, if that person cannot look at the case like Shimon didn't exist, like he doesn't know him from a hole in the wall, or, doesn't know him from Adam, so to speak, and he's got no bias whatsoever, fine, he can sit there, right? But if he's got the slightest amount of bias, because Shimon, gave him a gift, Shimon helped him out with something, and if he cannot look at Shimon the same way, then he shouldn't sit on the case. And there are many, many things. It could be not even money. It could be, he sees Shimon every day. Shimon says good morning. He says good morning. They have a conversation. They move on. It doesn't necessarily have to be something tangible. It doesn't have to be he gave him a gift, he gave him money or something like that. Whatever, they're friendly. So a person has to know. A person has to know if they're going to come in front of you and there's a judgment, whatever the other litigant is going to say, they have to look at this like they don't know him from anything. They have to look at him that they're both guilty, and then figure out who the one is guilty and who the one isn't. But if they don't, and they have a bias, they can't sit there and judge it. Now, could there be, let's say better, could there be unscrupulous judges? There could be, right? Unfortunately, there are rabbinical courts that may be on the take. So that's a problem. If you go, let's say Reuven has a claim against Shimon. Shimon can say, I want to go to this rabbinical court. What's the problem? Maybe that rabbinical court, Shimon's, that rabbinical court's on the take. And if that rabbinical court's on the take, Shimon's got the advantage. But you're going to say, come on, don't they have to be God-fearing? Don't they have to have so much knowledge? You're right, they do. It's not necessarily a question of knowledge, right? It's a question of integrity. And you can have rabbinical courts that don't have integrity. I've seen it with conversion. Certain rabbinical courts worth their weight in gold. They work very hard. Other rabbinical courts not doing what they should. They push away people that they should convert, and they convert people that they shouldn't convert, that they should really push away. So you're going to say, but, isn't there a system? Isn't there a system in place, that everyone should be on the same footing? So again, a person has to have a certain requisite of knowledge, right? That's also true. But at the same time, what does it mean to be a rabbinic court judge? You have to have a lot of fear of heaven, right? So my Rebbe always says, someone who passes the requisite exam, let's say passes the bar, lahavdil, we'll make a big distinction. Passes the bar, he can be a lawyer. Does that mean the lawyer has any fear of heaven at all? Doesn't mean that, just he passed the exam. No difference by a rabbinic court judge. Let's say he amassed all this knowledge, right? Learned for years and years, and he passes the exam. That's not enough to put him on a rabbinical court. My Rebbe would say, you got to see where he learned. He has to, speak to people. You have to see what his character traits are. You have to see what level of fear of heaven. Let the great rabbis of the generation decide that. Fine, they may have the requisite knowledge. Just because a person has the requisite knowledge doesn't mean they should be out there in a rabbinical court. Doesn't mean they necessarily should be teaching, because we always know. Right? We know that there are people who don't have the knowledge and they're out there giving all kinds of bad information. But there are people that could have, a lot of knowledge, but they don't have the ability to give over or, whatever. So one part of the arguments, and I don't necessarily have this clear myself, I'm just throwing this out there, and that is one part of the argument that some people are saying is you can't listen to this rabbinical court. This rabbinical court has no credibility. Right? If they have no credibility, let's just take that side. If that rabbinical court has no credibility, then this person is being judged wrongfully. Totally being judged wrongfully. I'm just saying on that side. I'm not saying I agree or not. I'm just saying on that side, you could say he's not going to get a fair shake because they're already biased. On the other hand, right? There's always the other hand. On the other hand, if this is a proper rabbinical court and they have all this information and a lot of these things is women recorded, right? They're all saying the same thing. They're all corroborating, right? The same thing. So then it's a little bit hard to say. It's a little bit hard to say, well, this rabbinical court, this, that, and the other thing. Right now, if you would tell me in general, it was one case, it was even two cases, right? Let's say it was even, let's say it was a couple cases, 2 or 3 cases, right? That's already enough. That's already enough to raise an awareness, of what's going on and to bring this person in. For sure, right? If it's one case, maybe you say it's an isolated thing. Maybe, the other person's guilty, not the person they're accusing. Again, I'm just talking in generalities, right? It could be the person did what the woman said he did. Okay, right? I'm not necessarily arguing that point. But if you have 22 women, I think it's 22 women that have corroborated the same thing, and women had to get divorced. They had to get divorced from their husbands. And many of them corroborated the same thing, that he threatened them and said, if you do X, Y, and Z, that's what I'll do. I am going to shoot myself in the head. Now, so that's obviously a threat, right? No question. Now, so that's one side looking at the Beis Din, right? What the Beis Din said, or what people think or they don't think. Now, the media in general, they've condemned him left and right, 100%, right? He's already guilty. Now, according to him, what would he say? What am I going to go in front of a rabbinical court for? I'm dead already. They're already going to convict me right now. And he claimed 100% he's innocent. Okay. So if a person's really innocent, unless, and they say, I'll go anywhere. I'm willing to give testimony, in front of anyone. Because he's not where he thinks he's right. He's got all the evidence to himself. Whatever it is, he thinks it's right. He'll go anywhere. But what if the person thinks he's going to get a raw deal? Even if he thinks he's innocent. I'm not saying he is. What if he thinks he's innocent? And now he's already been condemned all over the place. Who is going to be able to hear the case, right? Well, I'll give an example. It's a bad example. I'll age myself. You probably know what I'm talking about. Remember the case of OJ, right? Being chased on the highway, right? I got OJ Simpson many years ago. Who in the world could sit in a case, be unbiased, right? To be able to hear the case in the jury. They found people, right? They found people, in the jury. But, there's already, a lot of evidence and other things, whatever. So, like, a person could claim, and I'm not saying it's true, but a person can claim, why would I go in front of a rabbinical court? They're already condemning me. I'm already condemned. Right now, how far, and this is where it gets, as English would say, a little bit dicey. How far do we go with public opinion? Because there are rabbis that are saying that any of these women who came out, they're the ones that killed him. They're the ones that made him commit suicide. Now, it's a little bit hard to say also, because, this person's getting, accused all over the place. And I'm not saying the accusations aren't true. Let's make clear, right? They very well, I'm not saying they're not true. So, if that's the case, though, so what do you have? You have all these people coming out, corroborating the same thing. And if they're corroborating the same thing, it definitely looks like the guy is guilty, right? But again, you need evidence and all that, fine. So, even if that is the case, very hard for someone to say, well, because they brought it up and they brought it out, they have blood on their hands. Now, if what they say is true, and what he said is, if you go public, I will kill you, so I'm going to kill myself, etc. So obviously going to make them feel guilty. Now, the other question is, how do we deal with it as a community? Because the reality is it's not being dealt with right now. I guess, people are trying to figure out, how are we going to bring this up? How are we going to put it in a newspaper? Should we put it in a newspaper? Should we just not discuss it? So I mentioned the the Jewish Observer, when they came out with this, this magazine on kids at risk, it sold out. I think it sold out twice, 3 times, something like that. But it was a subject nobody wanted to deal with. Didn't mean the subject didn't exist. Subject definitely, existed, and they were calling it out many, many years ago, right? You're talking more than 25, 30 years ago almost, right? That they were, that they were already calling out this problem. So this is a general issue, and that is if you have a religious newspaper or a religious magazine, and certain things come up, there are certain topics that you don't necessarily want your kids to read about. There are certain topics you don't want to really discuss, but, some things may have to be discussed. You can't just brush it under the table. You can't say, well, it doesn't exist, and for many years, that's what happened. A lot of these quote unquote really controversial issues, they were put under the table. Put under the rug. Nobody wanted to deal with it. Nobody wanted to touch it, right? It was taboo, right? But the problem is, on that side, is that you could have people, we mentioned pedophiles. There are pedophiles out there, and they're still working in their schools. They're not disciplined. I'm not saying everywhere. I'm not saying it's across the board, right? But they're being protected. They're being protected. Why? Now, if they're guilty, and they're really guilty, why in the world should they be protected? So it's a catch-22. It's their word against, against the kid's word over here. But if you got multiple kids saying the same thing, you should have to act. Problem is, they don't want the publicity. They want to just, push it aside. Maybe they'll do other things to watch the person, whatever. They don't want him to, lose his livelihood, and then he's going to get banned. He's never going to be able to teach anywhere. Okay, but the person, people have a mistaken idea, and they say, well, we can't turn them into the authorities, right? That's forbidden. It's called a Moser, right? You can't turn someone into the authorities. You lose your portion of the world to come. But there's only one problem. What if the person's a menace? If the person's a menace, they're a menace. You have proof that they're a menace, and they're dangerous to society. Why shouldn't I turn them in? Why shouldn't I turn them in? It's a mitzvah to turn them in, right? Now, I'm not going to say every single time this is what a person should do. You have to ask, your local Orthodox rabbi what to do in such a case. But some things I think are pretty obvious. If you see somebody, who they are, and they drive recklessly, and you see them on a regular basis driving recklessly, and you can catch them, you should catch them. They're a danger. They may run over kids, God forbid. They may do other things. But, if you know somebody and it's clear, and 100%, this person's a pedophile, right? Many cases you have to turn them in. You don't want them being around other kids. Boys, girls, doesn't matter, right? It's irrelevant. Oh no, I can't. Person's got a family. He's got to make a living. If the charge is substantiated, and it's clear, you gotta say if it's gonna be much worse, and he's gonna have to go to jail. You can't leave him out in society. That is not what you can do. Now, someone, is what I've heard. People can argue on this. Someone, has done such a thing, probably had it done to them, right? So it's it's already sort of part of them. It's almost no rehabilitation for such a thing, right? But be that as it may, they're a menace to society. You don't want them in your neighborhood, and if they're in your neighborhood, you put up signs. You're allowed to do that, even according to the Torah, because people have to know. People absolutely have to know. And there's no mitzvah hiding this. You have to know how to deal with it, but there's no mitzvah of putting it underneath the rug and not dealing with it. And there are cases, I can tell you, there are cases where it didn't get dealt with. Just sort of got pushed aside. So now the question is, okay, based on that, see, that was good. Only took 20 minutes to introduce the topic. Now, based on that, people are saying, what about the victims? So how can the press be silent? These victims. They're going to think, oh, they're this, they're that, and the other thing. There was already a case, I think today or yesterday, on Friday, that one of the victims committed suicide. There's probably going to be a lot more, God forbid, of these victims. So what's the merit on that side not to give them legitimacy, or at least, they should have their say or something, and not just sort of pushed aside, because then what happens? Then they say, oh, nobody really cares what happened to me, right? I can't even say anything because I'm just going to get squashed because this person's high profile. Then no one's going to listen to me, and all that. So then the other side of the question, there are like a lot of different sides over here, right? Another side of the question is, so what about the victims? What about the victims over here? Well, the victims, get punished over and over again because I can't talk about this. This person's high profile. Can't, So there has to be a way. There has to be a way, some way, that, it does get out there. It does get discussed because, what's going to happen with the victims over here? The victims get totally legitimized. That's what happens, God forbid. Let's say, a child gets raped, and they say, nah, it didn't happen. Nah, come on, it's your word against an adult sport. Nah, they would never do it. They would never this. They don't listen to them. That's even worse than what the person did. 10 times worse. Right? And, there are people that have been attacked. They weren't believed. Right? Parents didn't believe them. Nobody believed them. They thought they made it up. Now, there are cases where that is true. Right? There are cases where people do make it up. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a legitimate case. And then no, it didn't happen. You imagined it. Whatever. You're a loser. You're this. You can't, you can't destroy someone's life. But it happened. You can't just say, oh, it didn't happen. It happened. Right? So what? You let the person go scot-free? I don't care if it's a family member, whoever it is. You let the person go scot-free? How can you let them go scot-free? Right? They created a horrific crime that a person may never recover from. But not only that they don't get convicted in this case, but the person has been made out to be destroyed, made out to be a loser, a hypochondriac, who knows what, and it's like it happens over and over and over again, and they never get over it. They absolutely 100% never get over it. They could go through a lot of therapy, a lot of different things. There are people, even the person gets convicted and the person gets to, goes to jail. They're still scarred. They're still tremendously scarred. I heard a story, a number of years ago, cases like this. And this person says, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, and this guy, and he's talking about this, this person that, whatever, that attacked him, whatever, a number of times, and he's still affected, right? He's living a normal life. I don't know if he's still in therapy or not. Went to therapy for a while, to deal with it. But that person, okay, that person went to jail. I don't know, still in jail or not, whatever the case is. But that person got convicted, went to jail. Okay, so that's a partial thing over here. That certainly helps because what the person went through gets legitimized. Right, gets legitimized. Doesn't mean it's not affected by it, even if the person gets convicted. But what about someone who's delegitimized? And they say, no, it didn't happen. No, and they don't have their say. They don't get to say what they need to say. Now again, someone will say they're lost of lashon hara, and this and that, but it has to get out in the proper way, right? It certainly has to get out. If the person committed everything that they say, it should go out. Person should get prosecuted and everything else, right? But what happened? So he committed suicide before. But there's old catch-22, right? What's the catch-22? This person, they already condemned him before he even had a chance to open his mouth. But even if he would have opened his mouth, many are saying it doesn't really matter. He's guilty anyway. Right, he didn't have his day in court. He claimed he never would have had his day in court. It never would have mattered. He's already convicted. That's a problem. Right? I'm not saying he didn't do it. Right? Most likely he did it. No, that very well could be. Right? That's probably, that certainly looks like the case. But part of me could hear, the idea that why should I go? Why, I'm going to go to, a court of law. Why would I go to, why do I go to Jewish court of law? I'm dead. They are going to demolish me. They are going to destroy me. They're not going to hear a word I said. So how does it work in a rabbinical court? They're going to, he's the plaintiff over here, and they're going to make the claims, right? The women will come in, they will make the claims, and he has to answer. And he would have to answer. Now, I would say like this. Now, this is just me. If someone is really innocent, 100% innocent, unless they think, this court is bought, this court is never going to give them, whether a Jewish court or not a Jewish court, they're not gonna get their time to be heard. They're not gonna go. Why? Why would they go? On the other hand, a person could be stubborn, a person could be defiant, and what would they say? I'll go to any court you want because I know I'm innocent. I have no doubt I'm innocent, right? So what are you afraid of? What would you be afraid of? They can say maybe, you can say maybe the court's bought off. You don't know what can happen in court. You don't know what, the final verdict could be. You really don't know. But the reality is, if you're pretty confident in your case, you have a good lawyer, you present your case, and it's a relatively open and shut case, you should win the case. Now, are there X factors? There are X factors. 100%. There could be X factors. But if and, I'll use myself as an example. If God forbid, something happened where I know I'm 100% innocent, right? 100% innocent. You want to go to any court? I'm ready. Because I know I'm innocent. And I got all the evidence to prove that I'm innocent. So what am I worried about? I'm worried about the judge is going to be paid off. Should I be worried about that? I mean, there are certain things, you're right, that may be out of your control. But all things being equal, you go into a, you go into a parv place. Just like, well, Havdil will make a distinction, just like the Super Bowl. Where's the Super Bowl played? In a neutral place. Usually, it's not the home field of either team. Happened last year. It happened to be the case. Tampa Bay played in Tampa Bay, but the odds of that are very slim, very slim. So now there's a rabbinical court judge here. There are 3 rabbinical court judges. So you're going to people that don't know you, right? Most likely they don't know you. They have no connection to you, right? So what am I worried about? I say, okay, I'm going to lay it down. These are my claims, right? Or let's say better. Someone's going to say, okay, this person did this, that, and the other thing, right? And, they owe us money. They owe us this, they owe us that, whatever the case is, right? So they say, okay, what do you have to say? They say, yeah, I owed the money. I paid it. You know what evidence I have? Here are the documents. Signed. There are the documents signed. It's paid. Then they have to go back and say why those aren't the right documents or whatever. But if you have a clear-cut case, let's say, what are you afraid of? You're going to go to a court. What? The court's going to be paid off. Pinnacle court's going to be paid off. Yeah, there might be biases. There are certain very high-profile cases. Hard to find jurors that don't know anything about the case. That's why I think the case of OJ was an unbelievable thing. Who didn't hear about the case? Right? Who's not biased in any way? When they saw what happened, and they heard, and all that. So yeah, it took them a while. It took them a long time to find jurors. But if you feel you're in the right, and we're talking about rabbinical court judges, you're not talking about, a secular court here. If you're talking rabbinical court judges, right? So what are you worried about? Even in the secular court, I would say the same thing. So let's say they decide to go to a secular court. Let's say they get permission from the rabbinical court to go to a secular court. You're only allowed to go to secular court 2 Jews if you have permission from the rabbinical court. Even if the other side who's Jewish will never go to a rabbinical court, you still have to invite them 3 times, and then the rabbinical court will hear your side. If they feel you have what to say, they'll send you to secular court. But let's say it was with a non-Jew, even better. Non-Jew doesn't have, you can take a non-Jew to secular court. Not a problem. If he wants to go to a rabbinical court, fine, but most likely not. He'll probably want to go to secular court. So what am I afraid of? I got all the evidence. I got all the aces up my sleeve. I got nothing to worry about. I got to be worried. I should be worried. Maybe someone got paid off. Maybe, maybe something else. Maybe it's going to be a huge bias over here because of everything going on. I don't know. Maybe, if it's high profile enough, maybe, right? But, maybe if it's high profile, a lot of people are going to say, I'm never going to get a fair shake. Never get a fair shake. Why not? Because look who I am. A lot of people hate me and a lot of people this and a lot of people that. And, look what I've done in the world. But, maybe that's a different issue. Maybe that's a different issue. But I would think, and again, this is just me, but I would think so. What do you have to hide? I understand what you have to hide. You don't want to go, right? It could be a lot messy, and it ruined his life, ruined his family's life. No question about it. No question about it. But if someone wanted to clear their name, in general, the best way to clear your name is to go. Is to go and give all the evidence why these people are not telling the truth, why they're all lying. And if he had all that evidence, why? Okay, right? So why didn't he do it? So again, there's a lot of pressure from the outside. There's a lot of pressure from the inside. So a person feels like they're getting squeezed on both sides. They feels I'm not going to get a fair shake, right? But they claimed 100% I'm innocent. I don't know. You get 22 claims over here. 22 claims are very hard to brush away. And to just say, well, I can prove my case. I'm 100% innocent. Okay, show it, right? That's what I would have said. I would have said, fine. If you're really innocent, so go. So go in front of, pick 3 rabbinic court judges. Go in front of whoever you want, as long as they're proper rabbinic court judges, right? Go in front of whoever you want. Prove it, right? And prove your case. And prove to the world, right? But what's the problem also? The problem is, let's say they're all lying, right? For argument's sake, let's say they're all lying, and he comes out innocent. What happened? This whole thing prolongs for a long time. His name's thrown through the mud. Is ruined. His life is ruined. He can write more books. No one's going to buy them. Family going to get divorced. Kids will never speak to him. His life is ruined. Totally ruined. Right? That I can hear. That 100% I can hear. But at the same time, there's a way to do things. There is pressure. There is tremendous amount of pressure. So one side is saying, anyone who put pressure on them, these women coming forward, they have blood on their hands. Well, I don't understand why they have blood on their hands. They're claiming what this person did, right? 100%. And let's say, they're not lying, which I don't think they are. So they're coming forward. Why are you pushing them down? Why in the world are you knocking them out? Why don't they have a say over here? And they get destroyed 10 times more. 10 times more. And even if the person said, if you go public, I'll kill you, yeah, that's a threat. Why that, then they're going to think twice about doing it. But they're not an accomplice to murder. They didn't cause him to kill himself. That's what he threatened. Okay, that's what he did. But look what he did over here. Look at all the terrible things he did. So one thing checks off the other. It's like an even swap. It's not an even swap. Now you're telling me the women are coming out. It's all their fault. It's all their fault. He's dead. It's all their fault. His family's destroyed over here. And he ruined his life. It's all their fault. What do you mean it's all their fault? Why is it all their fault? Look what he did. He's not scot-free here. He doesn't get off scot-free. It was a threat. But for someone to say, and again, it's a hard thing to hear, but for someone to say, for what they did and coming forwards, they have blood on their hands. So my question would be, what should they have done? What should they have done? If they stay silent, this guy wins. Right? And it's like anybody who's high profile. They got a lot of power, money, fame, who's going to believe them and this and that. And then, these women started coming out of the woodworks, and the whole facade is over. But to say based on that, they have blood on their hands. I don't know. I wouldn't say that. Not at all. Right? They want justice to be done. They totally want justice to be done. Right? You brush it under the table, you kill them in the process. You say what they went through wasn't anything. Wasn't worthwhile, wasn't anything. They're nothing. I mean, that's what you're saying, essentially. But to say they have blood on their hand, that's, you gotta, so what are they supposed to do? Not say anything? So on the other end, if they don't say anything, so this guy wins, right? This guy totally wins over here. So somebody like this, should have been brought to justice. This person's a menace, tremendous menace to society, right? You got to bring him to justice. There's no question. He uprooted a number of marriages. I mean, a lot of things. We're not, I'm not going to go through the whole laundry list here. Many, many things this person did. So he gets off scot-free. Why should he get off scot-free? That's because he's high profile, right? He's got to be brought to justice. No different. Someone drives reckless. Someone is a thief or is a mafioso, and you saw them do something, right? If you stand by and don't say anything, you're just as guilty as them. in other words, I think the Gemara brings down, the Talmud says that if a person had the opportunity to give testimony, he doesn't, he's in big trouble. He's in big trouble. Why? Because he saw someone do something, and something egregious. He's going to say something. Now, let's say he gets threatened. Other person's a mafioso. He said, listen, you open your mouth, you're dead. Right? Still, we have to say, a person's a menace. There's a mitzvah to turn them in. Total mitzvah, because they're causing havoc in society. It's, it's Lashon Hara. Oh, it's this. Right? So, you got to show, did the person do it or he didn't do it? So we don't have a trial, right? There was no trial. But you got 22 women making these allegations. 22. That's not a couple. Right? So according to this rabbinical court, whatever a person's going to say, they said they got ample evidence to convict. Ample evidence from all these women. Now, he's not going to be able to prove his innocent over here, right? Because obviously he's not around, right? But, that would be the obvious thing. So you take him to Basin, you take him to court, let him answer. They invited him, he wouldn't come. He refused to come. Now, on the other side of that, we mentioned society can destroy a person. The media can destroy a person. Guilty till proven innocent, according to the media. So, he can say, I'm going to go to Basin. What are you kidding? They're gonna convict me straight away. I'm not going to get a fair shake. But if he's really guilty, then, I'm just pointing out the media can be, the worst enemy over here. 100%. And let's just say, for argument's sake, let's say he would have gone to court and he would have been acquitted. Let's say on many accounts he would have been acquitted, right? His reputation's destroyed, totally destroyed, right? We'll make a little distinction here. If the New York Times came out and said something, that was false against somebody, they lied, they were guilty of libel, right? They're not going to put on page 1 their apology. Their apology is going to be on page like 247, and you're going to need bifocals to be able to read it, right? The damage is already done. They'll say, yeah, we're sorry, they may have to pay a fine. Very good, but they already destroyed the person. By the time this already comes out and they're already innocent, they've already been destroyed, totally destroyed. I'm not saying this is the case over here, right? But if it would be, the media already convicted him. Nothing to talk about. I'm not saying he's innocent, right? Don't misquote me. I don't want anyone to misquote me. I'm not saying he's innocent, right? But at the same time, if he was, what would the media say then? Would they, we're so sorry. We didn't know what we were doing. And he's finished. His wife will never trust him. His kids, he's finished. Right? What's he going to do now? Be a garbage collector. What's he going to do? Right? His reputation's destroyed. 100% destroyed, right? Media, and the media is very good at that. Very, very good at that. And a lot of times there will be misquotes, fabrications, this and that. I'm not saying if the person's guilty, person's guilty, right? That there's nothing to talk about. So fine, but there's a lot of buildup, and they're going to get, they're going to try and deal with it from every angle. They're gonna, then they're gonna go into the past. They're gonna this, all kinds of things where it gets way out of control. It gets way out of control. But that's what happens. Then you have to go to court and the whole spectacle in court. I mean, look what happened. As we mentioned in the OJ trial, it's crazy. It's a circus, right? It's a total circus, right? What it was, and it took forever to go through and this and that, and all the other things. Right, but then he was guilty of other things later. This guy wasn't squeaky clean, obviously, right? But at that point, I mean, it destroyed, total reputation destroyed. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it, for what he did or what he was accused of or whatever, right? But that's the other side of the coin, But then you hit another problem, right? And then this we discussed as well. How does the Jewish press discuss it? How do they view it? Now, obviously, you got to be very careful in the laws of Lashon Hara, right? And Jewish magazines hopefully will be, they're just there reporting the news. They're not, not giving opinion, this and that, let's say, right? But it can very easily turn into a Lashon Hara fest over here, and things that will be said will be forbidden, and this and that. But it's a very touchy topic. The reason is because of the nature of the topic, and that being the case, how are you going to put it in a family magazine? If it's a family magazine, and kids are going to read it, and teenagers are going to read it, not something you necessarily want in there. But the media itself, up until this point, the media itself has really been silent. The Jewish media, let's say better. Jewish media, 100% has been silent. Now, the question is, how really should they deal with it? Now, the victims, on the other hand, could say, you have to get this out. This person has to be condemned. We want to give, over our information. So if it's a family magazine, it's going to be a little bit hard to do this, in a clean way. But at the same time, that should come out. Things should come out if it's true and the allegations are true, right? They should definitely come out, because then you're not, if not, what happens? The women over here, they're going to think like, oh, they think I'm lying. They don't think I have anything to say over here. And seemingly this person gets away with it based on their reputation. Yeah, it doesn't matter how many people corroborate or not, right? The fact is, he gets away with it. Yeah, fine, he took the easy way out, right? He gave up his life, right? In certain ways, that's the easy way out. But, his family, they're the ones picking up the pieces over here, if they didn't know about what was going on before. It's a mess. It's a total mess. So on the one hand, I can say, well, the media is going to have a very difficult time. And the reason is because it's a very difficult issue. It's a very difficult topic here. So when you have, young readers, etc., even older readers, there are topics that, over the years, there have been magazines not afraid to deal with difficult issues. See, that's why we do controversial issues, right? They're not afraid, to deal with issues that are, that are difficult. Mental health, being one of them. There are a lot of issues, that they dealt with in a, I would say, in a very well way, in a very good way. But, there are issues that get brushed, under the carpet, swept under the carpet, so to speak. I just mentioned, mention it again, mental health. So for years and years, you didn't hear necessarily anything about, mental health and, going to psychologists and this and that. Now it's really, in vogue. A person has a therapist and, et cetera. But, something like that is not something that was really talked about in Jewish magazines, because it was just something that was sort of, swept under the carpet. Divorce, and abusive relationships, also, well, I'm not going to say taboo topic, but it wasn't a topic that's going to get any press, per se, because again, you're talking about, delicate issues, and there are always questions: should it be out there in Jewish magazines or not? Now on the other hand, you could say, come on, but we want to know how to deal with it. We want to know what great rabbis have to say, and what things to look out for. Just like in any health issue, even health issues don't affect most people, but someone came down with this and they can help others by telling their story. Okay, that's very good. So why in this case? You say by mental health, by abuse, by different things. Why shouldn't they be discussed? They're taboo. They were taboo for a long time. Why were they taboo? Because these are things you don't discuss in public. You don't air out your dirty laundry in public. But if someone is a newlywed, they're getting married, they want to know what signs to look out for. If a prospective husband has a problem with anger, or is possessive, or maybe is OCD, or something, or something like that, or maybe somebody could be on the autistic spectrum, right? Or has Asperger's or something, right? And that's something you can know 100% unless you know the person has it, right? Or the person's been diagnosed with it. And if someone's dating, they have to tell them at some point, right? While they're dating, that they were diagnosed for this, or they have, let's say they had cancer many years ago, they're in remission. They have to give over that information at some point. I wouldn't say in the first date, not second date, normally by the third date. That probably information has to be given over. And it might be given over even before. Why? Because if they're not compatible, they meet each other, they don't like each other, whatever. So fine, there's no point to give over the information. And not only that, if you give over the information at the beginning before they go out, the person may not want to, set their child up with them. Why? Because, they have an issue. Maybe they have diabetes. Maybe they're in remission. Maybe, they've had some mental disorder, even though it's under control, right? If they would if a person would know that at the very beginning, they wouldn't let their kids go out with them. Doesn't matter if it's under control. What do I need that for? I need that like I need 3 heads. I mean, some people say I'd look better with 3 heads, but I need that like I need a hole in the head. I know of a story. I'll just tell one quick story. Somebody that didn't find out till after they were married. The wife suffered from depression, but it wasn't just depression. I mean, the person's like manic depressed, can't give over that information. Why not? It's lashon hara. That information has to be given over at some point. That they suffer from depression, they're on medication. You have to give over that medication. If not, you're not, you're shirking responsibility and you're messing someone up. And I know someone in that situation. I think they end up getting divorced in the end, right? But why withhold that information? Because if you withhold that information, person's got a better chance to get married. Okay, that I understand, but you're misleading the other person, totally misleading them. Or you could say, well, yeah, they suffer from depression, spoke to the doctor, and the doctor said, yeah, it's under control, it's been under control for a long time, you have nothing to worry about, I'm in touch with them and their medication and blah, blah, blah. And if the doctor's lying, which hopefully he's not, if the doctor's lying, then you get a real problem. But if the doctor's telling the truth, then the person has to make a decision. A person has to make a decision, do you want to go forward or not? Even though they may be on medication, right? But if it's totally under control, it's been under control for years. Why am I necessarily going to assume something's going to happen and, whatever, right? I mean, these are real issues. Someone is bipolar, someone who's schizophrenic. These are issues of people, can people like that get married? Now, obviously, they have to be on medication. They have to be in touch with a therapist. I know someone, is bipolar, but been on medication for years, sees a therapist regularly, and they're living a relatively normal life, married, a whole bunch of kids, etc. So these things can be dealt with. Schizophrenia might be a different issue, but we'll make it easier. Someone had cancer, they're in remission, right? They're in remission. They talk to the doctor, nothing to worry about. They're in remission. The person has to make a decision. Do you want to start up with somebody like that or not? Right? Because you don't know what's going to be. Anyone, God forbid, who has cancer, it may be gone. It could come back. It's like a person may feel like they're a time bomb. They're a time bomb ticking here, right? Just because it's in remission, hopefully it's in remission for a long time. It never comes back, right? But that's, whatever. I'm not going to say statistically it happens, doesn't happen, whatever the case is. But a person has to keep that in mind. So these things have to be told at some point, right? At some point while they're dating, it has to be told. If it's not told, that is a big problem. A person goes, oh, we're so religious. We're not going to give over that information. That's lashon hara. Can't speak lashon hara. What do you mean? That information has to be given. 100% it has to be given. If not, it's irresponsible. Totally irresponsible. And the person gets married, and a few weeks later, they see the person can't get out of bed. Right? Manic depression over here. And all of a sudden, they're on all this medication that they weren't told about. And life is ruined. I mean, it doesn't have to be ruined per se, but, look what happened over here. Oh, I couldn't say anything. It's lashon hara. Why is it lashon hara over here? That information has to be given over at some point. And then a person has to look into the medical issues. I know a friend of mine, we set up their son. The son has Crohn's, right? But it's under control. Totally under control. So the other side we know very well. They spoke to the doctor, they looked into it, and they're very happy. You got married, have a child, another one on the way, whatever, it's under control. But I'm saying some people may say, oh, got something like that, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want, medical issue, and some people could say that. That's that's their choice. They have to look into it. But I digress here. The idea over here is that we have to have seichel, we have to have understanding, when to say something, when not to say something, and it's not always certainly the best thing to sweep things under the rug over here, because now there's going to be an obvious question, because everyone's talking about it. Everybody's talking about what happened over here, so now we have an obligation, we have to explain this to our kids, what happened over here, and explaining it in a way that they're going to understand. If they're older, okay, it's a little bit easier, right? But there, I just want to point out on this issue, is that there are a lot of different facets. There are a lot of different sides. Now, I'm not siding with what this person did. I'm not saying he's innocent, not by any stretch. I'm just pointing out there are a lot of different factors could have pushed him to what he did, right? I'm not, that doesn't mean he's innocent, right? But, if it gets brushed under the, it gets, swept under the carpet, gets swept under the rug, you're not doing any justice whatsoever to the people that get abused over here, right? You're not doing anything like that. You're not helping them. At the same time, if you want to bring it out to the public and how, great rabbinic authorities are going to, chime in over here, and say what happened and, how they view it and this and that. So, okay, it's not going to be such an easy thing to put out there, necessarily, in the general press. At the same time, I mean, something's going to have to be said eventually. That's what I would assume. We're going to see how all this unfolds. But it's just interesting, over the last week with all of these allegations, week and a half with all these allegations, and then, last week he commits suicide, silence, silence on the side of, the Jewish media. Now, again, some rabbis absolutely condemning him, saying he won't have a portion of the world to come because he committed suicide, forget all the other things he did. Other people saying, it's the media that did it, and the women never should have come forward. I mean, it's, there are a lot of moving parts here. So look at that, in an hour, I was able to get all the facts, almost all the facts out, at the same time. So, we have to know, we have to know how to look at it, from a Torah perspective. We can't be afraid, to deal with, issues that certainly may be controversial. At the same time, we have to know how to look at it. We have to know what all the other factors involved are, and how it should be given over in the right way.
Right on. Very good, very good. So if you guys have any further questions, send them to any email associated with Rabbi Coffman. Do not send me your complaints. I'm just kidding.
We're not going to blow up your system because it's controversial issues, so I get all the headache. Not a problem. Rabbi Chaim Coffman at gmail.com or Michael Chaim Coffman on Facebook, or Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism. You can find me. You can find me any of those places. Don't send the hate to him. You can send it to me. It's good. I got big shoulders. It's fine.
There you go. There you go. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll be back here in about 15 minutes for another show. So y'all stay tuned. Rabbi, thank you for your time. Y'all take care, everybody. See you.
אתם תמיד